Hello, this is Mike Manrod, aka Crude Solutions, and I noticed something interesting I wanted to share. When analyzing malware, doing bug hunting, working with AI harnesses, there are a lot of use cases where we want isolation from our host OS. Sometimes a serious level of isolation, in which case maybe you build out an actual lab, but other times it's just casual isolation for things while you're tinkering or trying low risk but not zero risk types of testing or analysis. Obviously, Parallels is a hypervisor that runs on Mac OS that is optimized for convenience, and it's not the best hardcore hypervisor to begin with. But it works great if you're doing AI dev work, pretty low risk stuff on Mac, and it does let you toggle a lot of trust boundaries for either more collaboration, between the host OS and the VM, or to make it like more locked down for more security. And there is a pretty locked down mode you can run it in. Now, I've done a video in the past where we talked about some strange kiosk escapes involving escalation of privileges that only work, for example, if you're running Parallels VM tools. So, like, even if you lock it down, it's not absolute. If you're running some sort of hypervisor tools in your VM and that communicates with the hypervisor, it could be a potential, trust boundary issue, just depending on what level of isolation you're looking for. But in this case, what I noticed is the last update of Parallels and Parallels VM tools within my Windows VMs, at least, seemed to revert some settings. Most noteworthy was this share Mac applications with Windows. I had this off for multiple VMs spanning at least two MacBooks I've been able to test it on. And with this last update, because I tested it on a couple different VMs, this was off, and that boundary was intact. I ran the updates and it automatically rechecked this box. Again, don't know if this is widespread or if it's just for me, just for a few VMs. So may not be a big deal. But it was also a good teachable moment of, hey, if you're trying to create, whether it's for an AI harness or malware analysis or just bug testing, why does this matter? Well, a fun example is I created an empty file called test.csv. You notice with this box unchecked or checked, we can go through here and it provides a cross through to all sorts of apps that are on my MacBook. Let's see if this is dynamic. If I want to disable this, now I can go in here. I click open with, and you can see it only presents the apps I have installed in this VM. So I'll go enable it again. Let's see if it comes, we can see it's back dynamically. Now, why is this important? Here I've created a very simple Apple script called test script calc test 3. Now, granted, this is not like a very plausible attack, although maybe something click fix style could work with this. And we're going to click allow once. And then in this case, it doesn't auto launch. But like we can see, we have the ability that we've gotten a script that existed in the VM that has the capability to launch calculator. Again, very, very simple, but you could imagine that if this were a spreadsheet or a PDF with more nuanced active content, it actually could possibly do things that could cross the Mac to or the Windows to Mac trust boundary and potentially impact your host system. Again, this silly example I whipped up real quick in 30 seconds for this video obviously involved user interaction on both sides of it. And you did have to click this allow prompt. But if somebody had already clicked the always allow, maybe during previous testing, well, maybe that would have been impactful on this trust boundary breakdown. So again, this is really just a, hey, if you got an auto update of Parallels, the tactical thing is go double check all your settings, make sure they're how you wanted them to be. And for Parallels, that's probably a good idea, or really for any hypervisor. that you use for, enforcing trust boundaries for analysis. Good idea, anyway. But then also be aware of like the pros and cons and trust levels you get from different hypervisors of, say, UTM versus parallels versus building out a hardware isolated lab with a firewall and maybe like a proxy to a cloud location if you're doing something higher risk. Again, this is just VMs I use for tinkering and simple stuff. So not a huge deal, but thought I'd share. Thanks for joining. For those who celebrate, happy Mother's Day, and hope you all have a great rest of your Sunday. Bye.